So welcome everyone to the final series, as I said, in the Crash September webinar series. Today we are talking about a bit of a somber topic, which is how to protect your business whilst working remotely. And I have with me today Gary Lowe from Sinasura, who is our CAT cybersecurity specialist. Welcome, Gary.
Thank you, Marg.
And also we have Tim Allen from Insurance Advisor Net, who is our CAT insurance broker, who's going to be talking all things cyber insurance. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Okay, so before we get into the topic, I thought it would be good to just talk about some statistics, because statistics don't lie. So I was looking at an Australian newspaper article on August the 28th, and it was saying that 68% of employees are behind breaches, not the guy in the hood, employees, because businesses are rushing to set up their employees, it's IT at home, and they're getting access to stuff that they shouldn't get access to. And I guess if they're also employees and they don't necessarily want to go back, if they want to do a side hustle, this is a really great way to hack into the database. So that is a rather concerning statistic. The other one was that there was a 120% rise in June in healthcare, especially in the aged care sector. So that is also concerning. And there's also a 78% increase on people like you and me, that hackers are realizing that unfortunately we are really slack when it comes to our IT security. So what I'm going to do now is I'd like to start with you, Gary. I want to ask you, Gary, if you could just tell us what are the biggest IT risks that people watching today need to deal with when they're working from home.
Thanks, Marg, and that's a great introduction in terms of the types of issues that are out there at the moment and some of the statistics. I mean, I get bombarded with statistics every day on how things are increasing and changing as a direct consequence of people working at home. It's actually scary to the point that if you actually took them all to heart, you probably wouldn't actually get out of bed. So in many cases, it's actually best off not knowing. But to your question, in terms of the biggest risks associated with working from home, the challenge comes around because people that have worked in a corporate environment and then have had to move from that corporate environment to the home environment, they are now no longer protected by the levels of security that corporate environment provides them. So at the work environment, there's somebody else that has responsibility for making sure that the network is secure, the devices that are connected onto the network, the security of devices, the updating of those devices, and making sure that nothing.
Okay, looks like he's gone. So what we're going to do now is, whilst we're waiting for Gary to come back, I will fill you in with a little Marg story. Always good to have something to fill in the gap with a little Marg story. Okay, what you may or may not know is that I got hacked by somebody I knew when I was in a relationship. And this just goes to show how easy it is to get hacked. And this person isn't in technology. This person just knows how to download spyware that you can't see on your computer. So because I've been hacked, I basically now have a little password book. I don't know if you can see that here. All my passwords are in a little book, okay? So I usually have it on my desk. And what happened was I had a waste paper bin on the side of my desk, and it accidentally went in my waste paper bin. So as it went in my waste paper bin, I didn't realise. And then I went out and tipped it in the rubbish bin. And then I put it out on the nature strip, and it was there all night. Someone could have come and stole it. Got up the next morning, and here I am going, oh my God, where is my password book? And it just occurred to me that it might have gone in the waste paper bin. I thought, no way could have done that after I searched the house. So anyway, go out to the paper bin, to the recycle bin, open the lid, and oh my God, it's sitting on top of the pile of the hard rubbish. I snatched it out of there. It had all my tax file numbers, absolutely everything, because I just do not trust anything in the cloud. And I rushed in. I was like, oh my God. So I've now put the waste paper bin almost like 2 meters away from my desk, because I'm sitting there thinking, there's no way I'm going to let that happen again. Anyway, I came in to log on to this account, and I heard the garbage truck turn up, and it was like 4 minutes. So this goes to show how reliant we are on security. So Gary, can we just go back to that starting again, because hopefully you won't freeze again. You were talking about the IT risks that we need to deal with from home.
Yep, sure. Actually, just to finish off your story there, my wife does exactly the same thing with a little password book, but she actually has two: one that she keeps on the desk, and one that she keeps in her in her handbag. So if one does happen to go astray, she's actually got another one. So and naturally, the first thing that one should do if it goes astray is to change every damn password that's in that book. So just coming back to the point of working from home, as I said, in the corporate environment, someone who has responsibility for making sure that the network and all the devices that are on that network are actually protected. When you come to the home environment, that doesn't exist. So I almost guarantee that
is okay. So what we're going to do now is we've got technology problems, guys. So what we're going to do is maybe we'll just throw this over to Tim. Tim's going to talk to us about cyber insurance. So Tim, why should businesses consider cyber insurance?
Thanks, Marg. Look, make no mistake about it, cybercrime is a business. Earlier this week in New Zealand, the stock exchange got closed down for 2 days. So through hackers. Believe it or not, there's people in the Ukraine, Eastern European and China, and all over the place that their business is just clock on at 9 o'clock in a city building, and then do their hacking and then leave at 5 o'clock, just like any other business. So businesses should consider cyber risk as similar to how they treat fire insurance, burglary insurance, public liability and motor vehicles. Cyber is the new business peril that needs to be insured against. You've got, and I'm sure Gary will allude to this in his presentation, but cyber criminals at the moment or now will hack into your system, and they'll lay there for up to 12 months just learning how you operate and your mannerisms or the way you talk to people, and that's called business email compromise. And what they do, they'll just all of a sudden, when they're comfortable, they'll send an email out to someone in the accounts department and say, pay this bill, and before you know it, you're done your dough. But why we should consider, we've inherently a bit lazy in Australia. We've got the she'll be right, mate. We don't renew or review our antivirus. There's things like 2FA, two-factor authentication, which also is a risk mitigator. But just on the stats that you touched on before too, Marg, the average cost to a business in Australia at the moment is $280,000 following a breach. And in Victoria, where we get about a quarter of all breaches in Australia.
Wow. So what will cyber insurance cover a small business for, Tim?
Basically, a good policy will be broken down into 3 or 4 sections. So the first part of it is third-party losses. So where you've failed to secure third parties' data and they seek compensation. So you've got investigation costs, you can incur fines and penalties through regulatory means, and that section pays the defence cost and legal representation expenses. The next section is business interruption. So obviously you're going to have some downtime, so there'll be reimbursement for lost profits, as well as the necessary expenses that you incur to maintain the business whilst the interruption's going ahead. The other section is basically your own costs, what we call first party costs, and they basically reimburse you for credit monitoring, cyber extortion, data restoration, forensic costs, notification and PR costs, and also legal representation costs. So pretty much a package designed for remediation costs. And finally, what people should be considering is adding in, if it's not already added in, social engineering. And basically that's fraud, where the hackers will break in, and it covers your financial loss or the losses that you're legally liable to pay.
So are all cyber insurance policies the same, Tim?
No, most definitely not, Marg. We've just this week, there's a couple of new products out that will cover personal, so your own home cyber areas. But getting back to the business area, they come in different levels. So from your sole trader, there's small policies that will cover, and including the social engineering that I mentioned before. Those premiums start at $350 for a very minimal cover, but you can get covers starting from $25,000 right through to a couple of $1 million. And the clauses early on when Australian insurance companies started releasing insurance policies, some of the wordings made it that the breach had to emanate from within Australia, which is totally ridiculous. We do have the hackers in the hoodies, but to get those professional hackers, in the Eastern European areas, the wording just completely cut them out, so you couldn't claim on the policy.
So what level of cover, like you were talking about, there's like the minimum cover is like could be $350 a year to the millions. Like I'm assuming therefore that the millions would be for the multi-million-dollar businesses, big businesses. Or would that be a right interpretation? So like if we were just like working from home and we're a solopreneur, which one should we be taking out?
Yeah, the level of cover is really a comfort factor, or what I call a comfort factor. You've got to be comfortable in the insurance level that you choose. You should assess your exposures and then set your limits accordingly. And just bear in mind that if you do have to go to court, the daily defence costs can be a minimum of $10,000 a day. So if you're confident in your own practices that you've got the protection there, maybe you can get away with a small limit of 25,000. But for a small business, I'd be recommending starting at 100,000 and then look upwards of that. And obviously the corporates are, they've got the cover up to $2 million.
So $100,000 cover, would that be around $350 a year?
No, that would, depends which insurer and the level of, the breadth of the policy. You're probably looking around $1,000, something like that, for $100,000 cover.
So, Tim, is having a cyber insurance policy and then you've got the right software, we were talking about that, if you've got the right software to protect you in the home, and you've got your two-factor authentication and, you know, you've got your password manager happening, is that having that combination, does that mean you're going to be 100% safe?
Yeah, look, it's all about protection, and I mentioned to my clients that you've got the front end and the back end, and the front end is basically make sure your antivirus is up to date, make sure your staff are practicing, safe computerism, and make them aware, your staff, that don't click on links if you don't know. Come and ask someone. And if you get a weird email that just doesn't look right, don't follow it through, don't press on any links. And of course the back end is where I come in, and it's the cyber insurance. And we can't stop the hackers getting into the system, but we can definitely help out with the damage that they cause, and financially try and put you back to where you were. But the other takeaway is backups and education.
So, Tim, if we were in an office and now COVID hits and now we've got to go working remotely, and remember I was talking about how most businesses have rushed it, and they're just like, she'll be right, mate, we'll just get you set up at home. So let's say that the office is a business cyber insurance. Does that cover everyone who's in the staff at home? Like, does that extend out to the home?
Yeah, there's no fixed address for a cyber policy. So wherever you're conducting your business in Australia, you'll be covered if you get hacked.
Okay, so you know how we all hate it when something bad happens, and then we go to our insurance policy, and then there's this clause, but you didn't do that and you didn't do this. What would be the one thing that you would say that people should be really, really thinking about? Because if you're going to pay all this money on cover and then something happens and then they go, oh, but you didn't do this, what would it be?
Yeah, look, every policy of insurance has clauses in there, and you really need to make yourself aware what those clauses are, and the ramifications for, say, not keeping your antivirus up to date. It might null and void the policy, completely. So like any policy of insurance, as I said, they've all got clauses in there, and you need to read them to make sure that you're comfortable with what you're buying.
So we're going to now go back to Gary, third time lucky, and I'm really hoping that this time we're not going to have our techno guy freeze on us. So we're going to start again with you right from the beginning, because you were completely garbled, Gary, and we never got to hear the answer to the first question, which is, what are the biggest IT risks that people are dealing with in the home?
Okay, sorry, Mark. First, let me just quickly apologise. There's a lot of power outage issues still in our area, and we're losing access to 4G, plus NBN sort of dropping off. So everything's sort of hot and cold. And I've tried 3 different bits of technology to make sure that I'm as good as I can be on this call. So hopefully we'll be okay now. Fingers crossed. So yeah, back to your question there in terms of the biggest potential issues inside the house. So in the corporate network, people are safe in the knowledge that somebody is looking after that corporate environment for them. There's in quotes the IT guy, so to speak, who is in charge, and it's his responsibility to make sure that the network is actually protected. At home, that doesn't exist. You pick up your laptop, you go home, you turn it on, you connect to your home Wi-Fi, and you're operational. So people think if it works, then it's okay, but they don't see that hidden layer of security that's actually in place at the corporate office. So there's no one monitoring and managing what whether your machine's getting updated, whether your machine has the right level of antivirus software on there. There's no corporate firewall in place that's actually filtering emails that are coming in, that's filtering your websites that you're actually checking. There's nothing that's checking on when you're clicking links in your emails to make sure they're actually not going to be detrimental to your machine. So that doesn't happen the vast majority of circumstances at home. So people need to be aware of some of these things and then try and work out whether there are things that can actually be done to make them safer. As Tim so eloquently said, the responsibility now falls on the user to be aware and not just act as if they're in a secure environment and just happily click on whatever link or email is coming into them. So it's very much the user has to take a huge amount of responsibility, get their house in order, think of security where they typically don't think of security, to give themselves the best chance of being protected.
And I guess by talking about getting your house in order, that would include the teenagers who are coming onto your laptop, right? You've got all your business stuff on the laptop. They're supposed to be doing homeschooling, and then they start downloading stuff they shouldn't. So it is
absolutely.
It is a worry,
it doesn't even have to be on. Yeah, as it doesn't even have to be on your machine, because I've actually had clients and people referred to me over this the last sort of few months where little Johnny has brought a laptop from school, or his mates brought his laptop around, and Dad's been at home working, but little Johnny's laptop's been infected, which has in turn then infected Dad's work computer, and he hasn't been able to do his work. So having an uncontrolled environment is absolutely detrimental to your productivity.
Okay, can you share a case study now of an example of the disaster that could happen in the home when you're not properly protected?
Okay, so I probably have about 100 of these, but I'll pick a very, very recent one, which you could actually argue happened to somebody that should know better. So a legal client of mine, I got a call very recently. Unfortunately, he, like so many other people, have the very bad habit of using the same username and same password way too often. And in his particular case, he had used these credentials at an external site, and it wasn't LinkedIn, but just for the sake of the argument, so a LinkedIn breach where his details have been harvested from that. They then get put onto a password site up for sale. Someone then goes and buys or just downloads the username and password combination. They get those details. They then go to like a top 100 or top 1,000 sites around the place, banking sites, social media sites, industry sites, and see where that username and password combination actually work. In his particular case, one of the sites I actually went to was his Office 365 account, which he had his email in his Office 365. So what this person actually did, who got into his email account, they were sitting there for about a week before anyone even knew that they were in the account. So what this person was doing, they were monitoring and watching and learning how he actually engaged with his clients. In particular, they were looking for things to do with payments, because the game here is, how do I make money out of this? They found that the client had actually sent an email to one of his clients chasing up a $46,000 overdue payment. The client had actually said, not a problem, that's due for payment this afternoon. We'll make sure that actually goes out. So what, in quotes, Mr. Hacker then did, he put a rule into this person's email account that says, if you see any emails coming in from this particular customer, don't put them into the inbox. Go and send them off to another folder in the email account. So that meant when the client actually responded to the email, the customer had no idea, as in my client, had no idea this other person had responded. The same when emails were sent out. So that what Mr. Hacker then did, he sent an email to the customer saying, the remittance of $46,000 this afternoon, I've now changed my corporate banking details. Here's the new details. Can you please make sure it goes into this account? Now, it was all written in this person's normal language. As remember, he's been in this person's account for a week, looking, studying, understanding how this person engages with his customers. So it was, from a language perspective, nothing was abnormal. The only thing that actually saved this guy, and it was about 30 seconds before the payment was actually going to be made, was the client actually as in the paying client was just about to make the payment, and he rang the lawyer and said, I just want to just double check. Okay, so he had his radar up. He said, I just want to double check the new account number that you've actually sent through to me. Now, of course, at that point in time, the lawyer says, what are you talking about, Willis? Because he says, I haven't sent you any new account details. He goes, of course you have. The email you sent me probably 10, 15 minutes ago with the new bank details. He goes, wasn't from me. Of course, at that point in time, he didn't make the transfer. He called me straight away. I then spent a few hours, examining what had actually been occurring, tracing back where it all come from, how it actually originated, et cetera, et cetera. But if it wasn't for the diligence of the end client who thought to ring up, not to query the new bank account, the fact that it was new bank account, but just to double check the details in the new bank account. So if he hadn't have done that, that payment of $46,000 would have just disappeared. Now, I've got many, many, many examples of exactly that sort of scenario. And Marg, you and I have heard of those scenarios as well through presentations we've done to different organisations, where we're not talking, tens of thousands, we're talking hundreds of thousands or potentially even millions of dollars that have been transferred into wrong accounts. So the key takeaway from this one point here is never accept via email a change of account details. Always verify it verbally with the company that is instructing you to change the banking details. I can't stress that strongly enough.
And rule number 2 is don't send your login details over email either, or your password. You can have a password. That's another one. Write that one down, everyone. So, okay, so Tim was talking about, 12 months in the back end. In my case, 6 years. And I had no idea that this person had installed spyware into my Dropbox. Had no idea. But what sort of signs, is there any signs we should be looking for on your computer that would give away that someone's in there looking or just watching?
Okay, so a bit of a double-edged sword here. The really, really good bad guys won't leave any trails because they just want to sit there. They want to be there by stealth, silent, quiet, just looking, listening. They play the long game. They're after gathering maximum knowledge to then hit you with maximum impact. They're not just there for the quick, dash and run. They want the big dollars, so they have to learn and understand. And if they leave trails, then they're going to get caught and they're out of game. So where you'll normally get signs from the people that are not doing this on a let's say on a professional basis. It's what we call the script kiddies that are in there just for the quick bit of fun. Having said that, though, one of the most telling signs that someone's got access to some of your information is if you've got, let's say, email or mobile phone verification to any of your sign-ins. Like you're signing into a new account. When you sign in, you get a notification comes up from Google or Microsoft or whatever, Facebook to your email or to your phone saying, we've detected a sign-in from, XYZ. If that wasn't you, then, change your password, let us know, blah, blah, blah. If it was you, then you can ignore it. So those sorts of, let's say, email or text alerts are becoming more prominent to let you know when it detects activity from not your normal device. So that's probably the number one way that you'll actually see things, getting a text or an email at the time that something's actually occurring. Other sort of telltale signs are in web browsers. When you're on a site, you get a feel that something's just not quite right. Okay, it may not necessarily be something obvious on the screen. It just doesn't feel normal. Okay, so it's hard to say, oh, hang on, see that big red flashing circle in the corner saying, hey, I'm here doing something. You will rarely see that. I mean, I had probably a few months ago. I was on the 9.com.au, so pretty prominent site. And you go to that site and there's ads on that site. And what it turned out, there was actually a dodgy ad on that site. And without sort of going into detail, but again, it just didn't feel right. And then when I was actually trying to do other things within that browser, certain things weren't working, and so I ended up having to get in touch with Channel 9 and go through. It's a bit of a process, and they found what had actually occurred. And funny enough, that was actually the second time in about 9 months I'd actually seen the same thing occurring. So it's just a matter of understanding what is normal, and when you see something that's not normal, the radar should actually go up. The other one, which is again, people probably see ad nauseum, but that you need to pay attention to, is the emails that aren't, again, normal. Most people know what a normal email looks like. Many businesses will not even allow you to click on a link in an email, in the bigger businesses, because, they can't guarantee what's at the end of that link. Unfortunately, the bad guys are getting so damn good now at impersonating real businesses when it comes to emails. It is so damn easy to get an email from, in quotes, your electricity company saying, here's your latest bill, click here to retrieve your bill. And you look at it and you go, oh yeah, that's totally normal. Yes, it's my electricity company. Yes, it's got everything on there that looks and smells totally normal, but it's not. So if you have a change of behavior, e.g. with the electricity bill, if you've never received them in that manner and all of a sudden you start receiving them, you should scratch your head and go, hang on, why is this occurring? So don't just accept things. You always question things. And I tell my clients, look, if ever you're not sure, instead of just clicking, ring me. Ask me. I'll have a look, or I'll give you some guidance or a suggestion, because I'd much prefer to get the phone call of someone being cautious rather than the phone call of the shit's hit the fan, because one's easy to deal with, one's time consuming and usually expensive to deal with.
So Gary, you know how I was working from home and I got hacked, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't working remotely. I was just like everybody else, normal, work from home, small business owner. And
Yep.
that this person came through my IP address as well. If I'd had a VPN, which is a virtual private network, would that have
Well done.
helped? And what
Absolutely,
is
it
that?
would have.
Oh, would it?
Absolutely. So absolutely would have. So a VPN, virtual private network. Well done, Marg. So it has two principal functions. The easiest way to think of it, it's going to scramble all the information that leaves your computer and goes to a VPN server out there on the internet somewhere. So that whole point of communication from your machine to that server out there is all scrambled, all gobbledygook. So if someone happens to be trying to intercept any of your information, which I'll give you an example in a moment, that they will just get gibberish. They won't actually be able to interpret or copy or decrypt what it is that you're actually using. The second one is by going through a VPN, along with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of other people, when the information comes out of the server at the other end, it's all coming from one IP address. So people actually can't get into your machine because it's masked behind this particular address. So it's a very good way of preventing things from being able to come into your machine. I'll give you a quick example. You go to a coffee shop, and on the counter of the coffee shop is hey, we have free Wi-Fi. Today's password is coffee. Okay, so you come into the coffee shop, you put your laptop down, you see the coffee shop's name in your wireless list, you put the password in, hey presto, you're now online, and you now sit there for the day actually working. Now, all well and good. I come along with my laptop, and now I have my nefarious hat on at this point in time, and I've got some software sitting on my computer. I see what the local ID for the wireless is called. I see the password sitting up on the counter. I set that up on my laptop. So I'm now pretending to be the coffee shop's Wi-Fi. And I have a very strong transmitter on my machine, so that in most cases, when someone comes into the coffee shop and sits down and wants to connect to the Wi-Fi, they're actually going to connect to my machine in most cases, rather than connecting to the coffee shop. Now, you have absolutely no idea that you've done this because you're just connected to the Wi-Fi. But through this software that's sitting on my machine, I can now copy and capture everything leaving your machine. So if you're sitting there doing your banking, I'm going to capture your username, your password, and your banking details. I'm going to capture any documents that you're emailing. I'm going to be able to see everything that you're doing at that point in time. Now, if you were running a VPN on your machine, the information that's on your machine gets encrypted all the way from your machine through to the VPN server that you're running. So even if I am copying everything, I'm not going to be able to interpret or see or use any of that information. It's all been scrambled.
I wish I'd known that.
Should have asked.
So, how do you know you've been hacked, compromised? How do you know?
How do you know? How do you know? Well, I think we sort of touched on some of those points before in terms of things that you see, things that you feel that are not normal. Emails that you're actually going to get that shouldn't be there.
Okay, so what is our top 3 takeaways to protect ourselves that we could go and do today, Gary?
All right. So the top 3 things: number 1, number 2, and number 3, backups. So backup. I cannot stress that enough. If you have your data backed up, it doesn't matter who does what to your information. If they delete it, if they encrypt it, if they copy it, if they do whatever, you can actually get back to where you were. Your business, in most people's cases, is only as good as your data. So you have to take first-hand and personal responsibility for that data. Do not assume that the guys in the cloud where you're entrusting your data, whether it's in Google Drive, OneDrive, iCloud, whoever you're using your data with, don't just assume that, they've got my data, she'll be right, mate. Okay. In many cases, yes, they will have a copy of your data, but there's no guarantees that they will. So I tell everybody, take copies of your own data. You have to be personally responsible for it. Number 2, well, this is I'll put 1, 2, and 3 as point 1. So the next one, and Tim mentioned it earlier, 2-factor authentication. Was at a presentation last year with an ex senior detective, not detective, one of the big shots from the FBI, and he spoke for about 90 minutes. And at the end of it, he made the statement, no one's going to remember what I've just said for these last 90 minutes. He said, but if you take one thing away from this presentation, it's 2-factor authentication. If you do nothing else but what I'm telling you now is just use 2-factor authentication. And he said, if you have to use a particular site and they do not support 2-factor authentication, find someone else that does. He said, it is that important. He said, the vast majority of all compromises would disappear if people just used 2-factor authentication. It's also known as multi-factor authentication, so that the two are used interchangeably. So I strongly encourage everybody, if they're not using 2-factor authentication, to go out and have a look at every account that they're using and try and enable 2-factor authentication, or as I said, or multi-factor authentication. It is that important. The next one, and again, we've alluded to this a few times, but it's use unique passwords. Don't, particularly on important sites, don't reuse the same password. So don't have the same password on your email account that you have on your LinkedIn or your Facebook account or your bank account. So they all need to be unique. Now, it doesn't mean that, because humans, unfortunately, we're creatures of habit, and we can't remember anything, and we hate change, and we like simplicity. So I tell people that for sites that you go to that have no financial information in them, no personal information in it, you have those odd sites where you just have to create an account to be able to access their information. So there's nothing of yours in there. So there's no genuine consequence. You may choose to use the same combination username password on some of those sorts of sites, but anything that's important at all, even in the slightest bit, have a unique password and username combination. Now, whether you use a password book like Marg does, like my wife does, whether you use a password manager, which is a bit of software that sits on your machine, however you choose to do it, or whether you have a really good memory like I don't, however you choose to do it, just have some sort of process whereby you can do multiple and unique passwords. And a fourth point, bonus one, is make sure you use business grade antivirus software. Don't just use something because it's cheap. Don't use something because it's free. It's a small price to pay. If you pay circa $100 a year to protect your machine and your information, I think that's a very, very small cost to a business to give you a good sense of, or a reasonable sense of security. It's probably the one thing that is a primary interface between what you're doing and the rest of the world. So don't cut corners in terms of that one.
Just on that password thing last night, Gary, you won't believe this. I went to look for a recipe, okay? And I was on the taste.com.au site. And I'm like, oh my God, they have asked me, like they've given me free recipes for like 2 years. And now it was like, you have to open an account. And I remember this going, you know what? I remember you found my email address down in the dark web. And you said to me, oh, it was probably one of those sites that you like, it might have been, I think it was when I was like wanting to do the dog sitting thing, or I wanted to go on Airbnb, and I had probably used the same password, and then you found my email address and username. This is how scary it gets, guys, because I'm not multi-million-dollar Marg. I'm just little old me who's just like you, and this stuff actually happens. And so I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to think of another password. And I remember thinking, do not use something that I've used in the past. So I wrote it down again. And I remember, Gary, you used to say to me, the best thing to do is, guys, your passwords need to be 13 characters, all right? Not 5, 13. And you're going, oh my God. And make sure you put some squiggly, exclamation marks in there. And I remember, Gary, you used to say to me, so try and think of something that you remember, right? About passwords, or about, something, a sentence, and take the first letter, make that a capital, and then whatever's the next word, take the first letter of that. So because I've changed my password so goddamn often, right? A lot of my password starts with capital F for F-U-C-K, no, for God's sake, or 444 S, doing this again, because, and what I do is I just jumble it up sometimes, and it is true. You have to have such a long password, because they've got this bloody machine. They've got this machine. They just sit there like going down the pokies, and suddenly your password could come up. So this is really also important. I'm sure you've got lots of questions about your own situation, and I know, like, every time I come on a call like this with you, Gary, that I really start going, oh my God, I haven't done that. I've got to do this today, because I use a bookkeeper in the Philippines, and I have a VA who's in Western Australia, and that is a lot of the stuff, logins and you name it. So what I'm going to do now, while you think about your questions, I'm going to actually show you a little video, which is going to make you think, because these hackers, guys, aren't always in the hood. So I'm just going to share this little video with you. And one moment, put that one up, go back here, and it's that one. Just watch this. This is horrific. This is just how scary it is, especially, I guess, those people who are now out of work and go, God, I can't survive, so I have to go to crime. Watch this.
How did you decide to become a hacker?
Well, I'm not really sure what it means to become a hacker.
Did anyone
That's
hear
like
that?
some guy in a hoodie who types really fast and stays up all night writing code and cracking passwords. It's not me. I just spy on people and see what makes them click. It's not a bad job.
Marg, CEO of Qualicard, set to report earnings after their blockbuster IPO.
So you consider this a job?
I put a lot of work into this. I'm not lazy. It takes research to figure out the key players, learn all about them, their families, their friends, what they care about. You have to understand the company's organization.
have the decrypt key. Marg, we have a big problem. The ransomware was just to distract us. They got inside. They got everything. Customer data, financials, everything.
Qualicards is reeling today from the news that hackers have released the personal information of nearly
The
2
Nasdaq
million
closed
customers.
lower today, led by Qualicart, which was down 14% on news that their recent data breach may be far worse than the company
Its stock
originally
fell to
acknowledged.
a new all-time low on news that CEO Marg is stepping down after what is turning out to be one of the worst breaches of personal information in recent history.
Do you feel bad about releasing the personal information? All the financials? All the money that was lost?
All I did was get the files. I'm not the one that decided to release them. I'm not the one that shorted the stock. Somebody else had their reasons for that. It's above my pay grade. I was paid to do a job, and I did it well. And that's what's expected of anyone, isn't it? Anyway, markets bounce back.
Scary, isn't it? As I said, my hacker wasn't in a hood. My hacker knew me. So I'm sure that you have all got your own situations here right now that you might like to ask either Tim or Gary a question. So if you do have a question, I ask you to unmute yourself now or put your hand up so I can see that you have a question, and you can ask Gary or Tim. Anyone got a question? You, Brahman? Unmute yourself.
Sorry. I use LastPass with my VA business. And I also, of course, have a password booklet. And I do have insurance, Tim, for cyber insurance. So is LastPass and the booklet enough for me, being a VA, that my clients are all over the place and I have a lot of personal information of various clients? Is that enough security for passwords situation?
Is it enough? So there's the security aspect of those applications like LastPass is making sure that nobody else can actually get into that. So as long as you're using a two-factor authentication to get into it, then you can have a fairly high degree of confidence that the information that you put in there is secured. So the information that's in your booklet, as Marg sort of found out earlier, was that if it happens to go astray and ends up in the wrong people's hands, then information's now not secure. But having it in something like LastPass or one of those is actually arguably the best repository for that sort of information.
Yeah, well, I do have the two-factor on it, so that's fine.
Beautiful. Yeah, I know way too many people that use those sorts of applications, but they do not have two-factor authentication on either because they've chosen a password manager that doesn't support it, or they just don't know that two-factor authentication exists and haven't got around to actually setting it up.
Yeah, no.
So yes, you're doing well.
I get it through my email. All right, thanks.
Yep. So you just need to be careful just to clarify that point, you just need to be careful with the email one. As I mentioned earlier, if your email gets compromised, then those two-factor authentication codes coming back into your email will end up in the wrong hands. So you just have to be mindful of that one as well.
Yeah, the email isn't attached to the business at all. So it's something so totally out left field that I think that should be safe that way.
Very good.
Gary, you've got a question?
Yeah, hi, Gary. Can I sort of ask about, you know how like your web browser, like Chrome and things like that, saves all your passwords, and you can type in your computer password and it tells you all your password logins and everything like that? Is that a huge no-no, and how do you get rid of those things?
Okay, so unfortunately, the likes of Chrome and many of those others don't actually encrypt all of those details that are stored in there. So what I would suggest to use is use a password manager like your OnePass or LastPass or Dashlane, for example. They're probably the three bigger ones that are on the market, and you can integrate those with your browser. So instead of your browser remembering the details, those details are incorporated into that password manager as well. So you get the convenience and simplicity of having it, in quotes, the browser remember it, but technically the browser's not remembering it. It's reverting to your password manager to pull the information.
And delete all those old references?
Sorry, say it again.
She said delete. Do you delete all the old references?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I actually have my browsers all set that as soon as I exit that session, it actually deletes everything associated with the session. So they never store any information at all in my browsers. Most people don't have that set, and by default, that's not set there. But I would encourage people to do that, because that way, if something inadvertent happens to come through on a session, when I say session, as in you're browsing something, it gets deleted when you close that browser. So yes, go in, not just clearing a cookie, but clearing your cache, clearing your history, clearing just all the browsers. Make it fairly easy to clear all of that sort of tracking information. So yeah, make it either automatic or a regular habit to delete that sort of stuff.
Is that only just on Google Chrome, Gary, that happens, or does that happen on like Firefox as well?
I have to be careful when I say it. So the general answer is yes, it happens to all of them. But they're always making changes to their systems, and trying to keep up with exactly who's doing what and when is always a challenge. So I more prefer to generalize and just say, assume that all of them do not encrypt your data, and instead use an integration into a sort of password manager if you want to remember passwords. Some people have a practice of do not, and I don't even integrate there. I do not integrate any passwords into my browser sessions at all. If I need a password for something, I will manually type that password in, because that way I have a big disconnect between the two, and I know that I then can't have someone in an active session inadvertently trying to get access to that application. It can't happen because I don't have it in there.
But you have that, Gary. But hang on a minute. When we do the email, I've got this email problem at the moment, and I've got to keep putting my password in. It's annoying the shit out of me. You know how it says always tick the box to remember me? Are you saying don't do that? Do or don't?
Okay, so email is okay. Imagine every single time you open your email, which I know you're in this boat, Marg, now. If every single time you open it, you got prompted for a password, whether it's an email or something else, you would it'd drive you batty. And I know that the issue does drive you batty, but imagine that was the norm. So as I said, us as humans, it's always a combination of what is going to tick a security box plus a convenience box. And unfortunately, the two are at opposite ends of the scale. So we've got to find somewhere, in the middle, so to speak, that we're comfortable with a bit of inconvenience, but a bit more security associated with it.
Has anyone got any other questions at all? Raise your hand. I can't see. I'm just sort of like skirting here, because I actually saw that Pete was on the call.
Actually, I've got a question.
Yeah, what's your question?
So I've got a question for Tim. So Tim, if I've got a customer who has a breach, and given that I'm the provider of a product or a service to his environment, can that person, that client, can he now sue me, go me, because his environment has actually been compromised?
Anyone can sue anyone at any time.
Or anything.
Correct.
That's fairly well answered.
It's whether the judge at the end of the day says yes, according to your agreement, your service agreement. you know, Mr. Gary, we find you you guilty, and you'll pay 100% of the costs.
Yeah, I suppose where I was coming from there was if the client happens to get compromised in some manner. So obviously the primary aim is for that client to have his own, say, cyber insurance policy to protect him if something does go wrong. But thinking, does he then have an out clause and say, well, hang on, in quotes, Gary looks after my IT. I've been compromised, therefore it's Gary's fault. So I don't need to take out a cyber insurance policy because I'll just go and sue Gary.
Yeah, what you will find is his insurers will put him back to where he was. So they'll engage forensic, you know, computer people and get him back up and running, and then they'll probably subrogate against yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, and I suppose it's not just people in my industry, but any sort of industries where you're actually providing a service to somebody else. If that results in that party being compromised in some way, then it leaves you as a provider of a service open. So yes, I that's one of the reasons why I make sure that I've got some pretty stringent you know, business coverage and cyber insurance coverage as myself, so that in the event of, you know, someone attacking me, so to speak, then I know at least the big part of the costs are going to be legal costs, and they're all covered. As you said, it's at 10 grand a day. It doesn't take much for the bill to rack up.
Exactly. No, too true.
I'll give a question from me to you, Gary. The question is, does it cost money to get a virtual private network set up?
Yes and no. There are free virtual private networks out there, and there are paid virtual private networks out there. And unfortunately, most people gravitate to the free. I would strongly suggest people do not use a free virtual private network, despite the temptation. Only a matter of months ago, there was quite a few of the free providers of service who all use the same let's say the same underlying engines to run the application. They were compromised. And that means that any information going through those VPNs is also compromised. So again, for this, the way I look at it, but you're running a business. Business has to incur some sorts of costs to be able to run your business. Think of some of these things as a small cost to protect your business. So whether it's a VPN, whether it's some antivirus software, whether it's some insurance, put some basic building blocks in place to protect not just yourself, but your business. So it's a small price to pay for a large peace of mind.
Okay, has anyone got any further questions?
I was inquiring about cyber insurance some time ago, and I was told that I didn't need it because I don't keep information about my clients on my computer. If I have any information like their name and email address and things like that, or personal information, it's on a flash drive or it's on company's information. I'm trying to think, I can't think what it is, but it's not on my computer. But I can't see that because I could see that someone could hack my flash drive when it's in my computer, like names and addresses.
Yeah, I don't know about the technicalities as far as can someone hack a USB drive or a flash drive, but if they do get in and manage to steal that personal information, yes, that's a typical situation where you would require and would be covered under a cyber insurance policy.
Yeah.
So are you saying, Tim, that she needs one? Because she's saying that she was told she doesn't need one.
I don't force insurance on anyone.
I know that, but that's not the question. The question is, does she, because I want her to be I want Christian to be confident that she knows that she was told the right information. We're not saying, we're not selling here. Christine,
Yeah.
we're not selling. What we're saying...
Well, I realise that. I felt myself that I was given the wrong information.
That's right.
You were. Anyone can take out insurance. as long as you have an insurable interest, and your interest is to protect your client's data.
So you don't get sued, Christine?
Yeah, that's right. Now, if I wasn't in business, as a personal user, you could still be sued for information you've got of people in email addresses and things like that, couldn't you?
Yeah, look, you could, and as I mentioned at the start of my discussion, just this week, there's a couple of insurance companies that are targeting or have a product now for domestic use. So if you want to be well and truly covered, you have a look at those products available.
Hey Tim, can you put like, you know how I've got my business insurance with you?
Mm-hmm.
Can I whack cyber in there?
It would be a separate policy, Marg.
Oh, okay. I thought you said you can tailor make.
Yeah,
But it's tailor make, like that's the package, and then you got to put the other package on.
correct.
Got it. Okay. All right. Thanks. Okay. Well, I'd just like to thank you all for coming to the, especially Christine, you've been an absolute champion. I think you've been through the last 3 or 4 of our Crash September webinar series, and obviously those who haven't been able to join us today, because I know there's a couple who haven't shown up, we will be having a opportunity for you to access some of the recordings, either single ones that you're interested in or a bundle, and we'll be getting in touch with you after that. But thanks very much.